That's my attorney in the front row. Thank you very much. Thank you. Briefly, let me thank the American Liver Foundation for the invitation and Fred for the opportunity to introduce you. And congratulations to all of this evening's honorees. Fred asked me to say a few things about entrepreneurship, and we often hear that a startup and therefore the life of an entrepreneur and an investor is not a sprint, right? But it's not even a marathon, which is typically over in 26.2 miles if you're lucky. The truth is it's more like a paper route. 7 days a week, and the papers are the heaviest on Sundays when everybody has a day off. And for close to 4 decades, day in and day out, Fred Middleton has delivered. So. I'm honored this evening to join you all and celebrate the life of a truly great man and a bona fide global biotech pioneer. In his personal reenactment of the 1949 gold rush, Fred's pioneering spirit led him in 1978 to leave Manhattan and forego the prestigious, plum position of a corporate development vice president at Chase Bank to heed Horace Greeley's advice to go west. He hitched his wagon to a nascent startup in San Francisco in an industry so virgin it didn't even have a name. Fred signed on with 2 of his fellow legendary pioneers, his MIT undergraduate roommate and fraternity brother Bob Swanson and biochemist Herb Boyer, co-inventor of recombinant DNA, as a 3rd member of Genentech's management team and the very first chief financial officer in the history of the biotechnology industry. But at Genentech, this management team did more than co-found a company. Fred and his co-creators brought into being one of the most dynamic, high-impact industries this planet has ever seen. It's not an overstatement to say that they fundamentally re-architected the biomedical landscape and reshaped the flow of history. They did this by inspiring many of the world's greatest intellects to pour their hearts and their souls into a breathtaking pioneering endeavor. All great visionary leaders attract other great leaders and contributors, and this was never more true than it was in the formative years of Genentech. We're fortunate to have a few other of these leaders at Genentech here tonight. Tom Kiley, who served alongside Fred on the Genentech leadership for many years, front row. Bill Young, who we heard was a past recipient of this award. And Kim Popovits, another recipient of tonight's honorees. Many of the world's greatest scientists brought their brilliance, their heart, and their grit to Genentech, inspired by the vision that could serve humanity in a way and on a scale unprecedented in human history. They also brought their sass and mischief. Tom Kiley revealed that no one at Genentech was safe from flying water balloons and flying pies at the traditional Genentech hoedown parties. Although unfortunately he assured me that none of these were thrown by Fred, but equally unfortunate is that no one I talked to could seem to produce even a single picture of Fred in a grass skirt. But while the scientists pioneered new innovations in the lab, Fred pioneered new ways to finance them through innovative R&D partnerships that enabled Genentech to retain essential commercial rights to discoveries. The depth and breadth of the achievement and contribution of Fred and his fellow pioneers at Genentech is made all the more stunning by the historical context in which it played out. The U.S. economy at that time was at the height of what then President Jimmy Carter called a crisis of confidence in his now famous malaise speech. Nowhere was this felt more than in the life science sector, where funding was essentially a wasteland, and an IPO for this sector was widely considered unimaginable on Wall Street. There was also fierce resistance from academia, with accusations of scientists selling out and leaving the confines of the ivory tower for a rogue startup in San Francisco that Tom told me was located in an air freight forwarding warehouse. Right? Amidst this adversity and other headwinds, Genentech achieved an IPO in 1980 that jolted Wall Street, beating Apple to the public markets by 3 months in what the Wall Street Journal called one of the most spectacular market debuts in recent history. The IPO that Fred orchestrated deposited $35 million in the company's coffers on the strength of human hormones produced by bacteria but truly lit the aspirations of diabetics worldwide who would start treating themselves with human insulin and stop injecting themselves with insulin isolated from pigs and from cows. From this point on, the company ascended from one aspirational breakthrough to another, and now some 200 companies can trace their roots to the dynamic culture created at Genentech. But post-Genentech, Fred's contributions accelerated in the venture capital arena, founding Sanderling Ventures with a new co-creator and pioneer Bob McNeil, raising $30 million in their first fund together and over $1 billion in the 30 years following. This has enabled the creation of more than 90 biomedical companies, 25 of which Fred has put his shoulder behind the plow to break new ground alongside the entrepreneur. The legend of Fred's collaborative creations is immense, and the ripple effect of his multifaceted investments are profound and ongoing. Fred's legacy of contribution also runs deep in philanthropy. Among his many charitable endeavors, he has been a major investor in the Robert Swanson Biotechnology Center at MIT and the Biotechnology Learning Center here close by in San Mateo. And on a personal note, as an entrepreneur and co-founder of one of Fred's ventures, LineaGen Incorporated in Salt Lake City, I feel an undeniable kinship with Fred, coupled with a profound sense of gratitude for his steady guiding hand throughout the 10 years of our journey together. LineaGen was formed to further expand the understanding of autism and other forms of developmental delay, and to enable the better medical care through the most comprehensive and advanced genetic testing ever developed. From the company's inception, Fred was a true co-creator of LineaGen's vision. I'll never forget breaking bread with Fred at the 2007 J.P. Morgan conference here in San Francisco, as I shared my initial vision with him. But I emerged from that meeting with a far deeper and richer understanding of what we could do and what we could become. I want to share a personal story with Fred as an example of the impact he has had on others through his commitment to LineaGen. Not long ago, Temple Grandin, who many of you know is a world-renowned scholar and well-known autism spokesperson, entrusted LineaGen with gaining the insight into the genetic nature of her own personal manifestation of autism. After a comprehensive interrogation of Temple's DNA sequence, LineaGen discovered the genetic variations that likely caused this great woman's specific form of autism, giving her answers that she has sought her entire life. When Fred invests in you, he puts more than money on the table. His impact runs deep and wide in the lives of the people and the organizations he touches. Fred has mentored me that the road is never straight, and you don't really know what the end will be. More often than not in this industry of high-risk science, it's usually a bumpy road leading to a dead end. And having a plan B distracts you from the most important papers that need to be delivered that day. But Fred believes that if you stick with good people and good science long enough, then something good will happen. This is a man who simply doesn't give up on the people and the ideas he believes in. He doesn't expect perfection, but he demands best effort, as we all should. I'd like to conclude this tribute to Fred on the subject of bricks that was guided by a conversation I had with one of Fred's collaborators at Sanderling. These are not ordinary bricks constructed of cement, sand, and water. Instead, they are bricks in society that consist of talents, passion, and a collective purpose of making the difference in the lives of others. I invite us all to ponder the extraordinary bricks that Fred has contributed to humanity, true cornerstones for saving and improving lives, co-creating and establishing the creation of a host of dynamic organizations, and in a very real sense, helping to craft a better world. As we consider his contribution, may we recommit our lives that bless and inspire others as Fred has done. Fred, my hope is one that I'm confident is shared by everybody in this room and entrepreneurs throughout the healthcare and life science world. May your tribe and your influence increase. And may your continued journey in life with your children, with Kimberly, and all your loved ones be an even more brilliant, productive, and satisfying than the one you've been on for the last 40 years. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming one of the great pioneers of our industry, a true mentor, and someone with whom I am honored to share a genuine friendship, Fred Middleton.
Thank you very much. Michael, I don't know if I deserve all those extraordinary comments you made, but thank you very much. I'd like to thank the ALF for this award and recognizing me here tonight. I'd like to give special thanks to Tom Nealon and Veronica LeBeau, the executive director of this event, which is really a terrific event. I'd like to recognize, the co-recipients from Genentech and from work in the biotech industry, notables such as Jean Deliage, Grant Heydrich, Bill Young, Brian Cunningham, Steve Sherwin, and Tom Kiley, who's here, former colleagues at Genentech who experienced much of what I experienced at Genentech and who certainly deserve an equal share of the credit, along with Bob Swanson, the co-founder. And I'd like to thank Michael for traveling all the way down here from Salt Lake City with his wife to make this introduction. I'd also like to thank my many friends and colleagues who came to this event, including my sweetheart Kimberly Davis and her family. Her father, Mark Davis, is here tonight, and her daughter, Olivia Davis, and my two children, Alex and Jennifer Wolf, who came from Los Angeles just to be here. Thank you. Jennifer's the mother of my two grandchildren, Tristan and Caden, who make up our family. Also my partner at Mesa Verde Ventures, which is a specialized seed fund in San Diego, Kerry Ng and his wife came up from Los Angeles, so we appreciate you being here as well. Along with my special shout out to my good friends and buddies of the Cuatro Caballeros who are all here, Doug, Bruce, Peter, and myself. And I won't go into that story other than to say it was an adventure on horseback in the Pinar del Rio. I'd also like to recognize Marie-Jen and Eric Lassila, who just celebrated their 3-month anniversary of marriage, which is very impressive because of their 5 children, which they already have. So, congratulations. The LineaGen story articulated briefly by Michael is a particularly impressive one. It was started in Utah with the knowledge gained from 7 million people in the state of Utah. Utah is a unique place in that the population migrated there starting around the 1840s and 1850s, and there's been almost perfect record keeping of the population there. Started originally by the Mormon Church, and with that population they were able to build family trees and observe phenotypes of autism and other disorders. And so we took that information and decided to look for the genetic understanding and basis of autism, which cost about $25 million and took about 4 or 5 years of research to complete. But it was done. The product has now been on the market for about 3 or 4 years. Autism is one of the most difficult disorders to diagnose. It takes 3 to 4 years oftentimes for a parent to get a definitive diagnosis on an autistic child because of all of the complexities of growth and development for a young child. And I think, as you could probably tell just listening to Michael, that he is one of the great entrepreneurs, certainly, that I've worked with. And I think we're going to hear tremendous things about, LineaGen in the future, so please stay tuned. The biotechnology universe that I work in consists of, I think, 4 different parts. There's the science and technology that creates the opportunity to develop new medicines and new therapies. There are the entrepreneurs and scientists who drive the vision of this potential forward. There are the VCs and supporting cast who support, guide, and enable and finance the entrepreneurs in this industry. This is the role typically that I play. It's a little bit like the producer or the executive director. It's behind the scenes, but it's not, it's not really the front stage of the actors. The other important piece of our industry are the clinicians and doctors and patients for whom we develop the drugs and medicines that we work on. And certainly, in the area of liver medicine, hepatitis B and hepatitis C have benefited dramatically from the research in biotech over the last 15 years or so, and I think that will continue. I've had the privilege during my career of working with some of the greatest entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, or at least meeting and maybe mentoring from them. That would include Bob Swanson, Herb Boyer, and also, I would say, Art Levinson of Genentech. Early on, it was Bob Noyce and Gordon Moore of Intel, Tom Perkins and Gene Kleiner of Kleiner Perkins. George Rathman and Gordon Binder of Amgen are other people who I greatly respected. I also met and worked with Wally Gilbert at Biogen, a company that Bill Young became chairman of for 5 years. I think he has the only double-header history in our industry. Also, Len Schleifer and Roy Vagelos at Regeneron, Bill Rutter and Ed Pinhote at Chiron, Dave Packard at Hewlett-Packard, Pitch Johnson at Asset Management, Arthur Rock of Arthur Rock and Company. And I even had a conversation briefly with Steve Jobs on the future of cancer research, which was quite interesting. What can you say about talented entrepreneurs? I think they have vision. They see what others cannot see or choose not to see. They focus very directly on their mission. They create a sense of excitement about what they're doing. It allows them to attract a following of investors, of employees, of people willing to carry out their vision, and ultimately of customers. Entrepreneurs are willing to take risks. People like me and others are there to temper some of those risks. More than anything, successful entrepreneurs are persistent, resilient, and able to deal with setbacks that occur often. They're not easily discouraged. They also are able to solve problems and find solutions to many types of problems. And when they achieve goals, they know how to celebrate victories. At Genentech, which I joined in 1979, at the age of 29, I had an exceptional opportunity to share in the creation of a new industry. We completed our first IPO in 1980. Roche took control of the company in 1990, but allowed the company to flourish independently under the leadership of Art Levinson. I was gone by then, but Genentech went on to become the leading developer of oncology drugs in the world, creating 5 blockbusters, which today are among the most frequently used cancer drugs in the world. One brief story I wanted to share with you about entrepreneurship, and I know that Bill and Tom are going to know the story, but I still think it's an inspiring one. In 1982, 2 years after our IPO, we knew that we needed to raise more money, another $40 million of equity. So we had a discussion with Corning Glass, who had approached us about a joint venture. We decided that we needed to ask them for a $20 million investment, which today would probably be the equivalent of about $100 million. So we spent the day showing the CEO around Amory Houghton III, a distinguished gentleman whose great-great-grandfather had founded Corning Glass in 1851. For dinner, we asked Dave Packard to join us, who had recently joined the Genentech board of directors. David Packard was the first and arguably the greatest.
You want to hear the end of the story, I'm sure. So we gave, Amory Houghton came out. He was the chief executive officer of Corning Glass. And discussions had gone quite well up to then, but we knew that without the blessing of Amory Houghton, the CEO, we would not receive any financing. So we weren't really sure of Amory's reaction to the day. Some of our scientists were a little scary back in those days, and a lot of folks coming out from the East were maybe a little scared about, some of the stuff that we were doing. So we had a dinner up at the top of 555 California at the Bankers Club. And we had a series of remarks, and at the end of the dinner, Amory Houghton placed a direct question to David Packard, asking him, what he thought about Genentech and why was he involved. And as my colleagues will attest, David's answer was 10 minutes of sheer roller coaster terror. Dave Packard, who was a man who spoke his mind and who really could not be influenced, to sell anything he didn't believe in, began by saying, the technology of Genentech has great potential, but it's unproven. I almost stood up and waved my arms. No, it's not, Dave. It's proven. We have human insulin in clinical trials. Second comment was, it's very exciting what this technology can do, but you have to realize, Amo, that this isn't my field. I'm an electrical engineer, so what do I know about molecular biology? His third comment was, I joined the board because I was asked by Tommy Perkins to provide advice, and I appreciate the fact that, I can give advice. But I'm not a personal investor in this company, you have to realize. I thought we were ruined. His next comment was, this innovation has tremendous potential, but it's highly risky, and you have to realize you could lose all your money. So, we weren't sure where this was all going, but David's final comment was, he said, I can tell you one thing with conviction, Amo. These boys remind me of me when I was starting out at HP. A sudden wave of emotion passed over the room. When God says you remind him of him, that's a good thing. So, they went ahead, they did the investment after about another 3 months of negotiations. And, I think interestingly, Amory Houghton, who is still alive today at age 90, his biography includes the following: U.S. Marine Corps, World War II, Harvard University graduate with honors, 1950, Chief Executive Officer, Corning Glass, 18 years, 1964 to, I believe it was 1983. U.S. Congressman, State of New York, 9 terms, I think it was 1987 to 2005. service on the board of directors of U.S. corporations, IBM, Citigroup, Procter & Gamble, and Genentech. So we appreciate the help that people like Dave, gave us in the early days to help us raise the money we needed. I wanted to, close by reading briefly David's credo of what makes a successful company. And those are: believe you can change the world, work quickly, keep the tools unlocked, work whenever. Know when to work alone and when to work together. Share tools and ideas. No politics and no bureaucracy, please. These concepts are ridiculous in our garage anyway. The customer defines a job well done. Radical ideas are not bad ideas. Invent different ways of working. Make a contribution every day. If you don't contribute, you don't leave the garage. And finally, believe that together we can accomplish anything. David Packard, 26 years old, 1938. Thank you.